right, Steve. Well, 3 more players in the fold, and not everyone can have a single digit next to their name in regards to their player ranking, their position ranking. Let's trust the coaches and the evaluators. Let's start with one Zion Grady. Now, his numbers are pretty high up the list as a top 75 player. Edge rusher out of the state of Alabama.
Yeah, tremendous prospect. And obviously it's the second guy from Alabama they have in this class, along with Naeem Offord, the outstanding defensive back. And I don't know the last time they took somebody from Alabama. I don't even know who it would even be. And to have 2 guys in this class and a possible third as well that could also end up at Ohio State. We can get into that here in a little bit as well after we talk about the commitments. But Zion Grady, I believe 6'4", 235 defensive end, will probably be in that 250 to 260 range by the time he enrolls at Ohio State a year from now. And again, another national top 100 player in this class. Was in for his official visit and loved what he saw. Enjoyed spending the time with Larry Johnson, the defensive line coach, and he is going to sign with the Buckeyes in December, it seems like. And, it just, again, it just speaks to what Ohio State's building, to add another piece at a critical key position like defensive end. And, Zion Grady, everybody in the country wanted him. And Ohio State's going to end up landing him. It's pretty impressive stuff.
Folks, as soon as these commits came down, I recognized that Buckeye Weekly was hot on the trail, immediately live. So please, again, Buckeye Weekly with Tony and the crew over there tracking these commits. And I got to say, Tony, as soon as Steve said something about, wonder when the last time the Buckeyes signed I always think of you. Where's the database? Does Tony have a list for this? I'm sure it's in the archive somewhere.
No, and this is something we've talked about in the past on Buckeye Huddle or Buckeye Weekly. And I don't have the answer right offhand. I can give you Louisiana. We can talk about Nader Abdallah in 2003 or whatever. But Alabama,
Arkansas with KJ Hill was from North Little Rock or something.
Mm-hmm. But Alabama is. And I think the key there is similar to what Ohio State was able to do in 2017 in Texas, when all of the Texas schools were fluctuating and in a flux, and you go in there and you steal some guys. Alabama right now, you lose Nick Saban, everybody's going to go in there and try to poach the top players because now is the only time you can really do it. And until Kalen DeBoer gets things righted and gets these relationships going. And there's a ton of players in Alabama. Alabama is one of the top states in terms of producing talent. They've got 4-star guys, and like the top 25, 30 guys in their class are all like 4-star guys in terms of the state of Alabama. There's a ton of talent there. And if Ohio State can go in there and get Naeem Offord, keep Zion Grady, and they're continuing to get in there. But Grady is a guy who is plays, I think, some defensive end in a 3-4, which he won't have to do in Ohio State's defense. But he's an edge rusher. He's powerful. He's a position of need for Ohio State because they've missed their numbers for a while now. And really, the way they want to rotate guys, you can't have enough defensive ends, and especially when you don't know if all of the defensive ends you've got are going to hit. So you've got to continue to bring these guys in. And right now, they've got to look. It's looking like a pretty decent class, and they're still recruiting guys. But it's a surprise in that, a year ago at this time, I don't think any of us. When was the last time we talked about Ohio State going after players in Alabama? And if we did talk about it, it wasn't in anything it wasn't serious conversation because you knew it wasn't going to happen. Now, you can talk about Grady, you can talk about Malik Autry, another guy. We can talk about Naeem Offord, and Ohio State has very legitimate. They've got 2 commits from 2 of those guys, and so they've got a very legitimate shot at landing both of them. Ultimately, it's just a really interesting time in the state when you've got Hugh Freeze in his second year, Kalen DeBoer in his first year, and everybody's trying to get into the state to get what they can and get out.
Stats on one Zion Grady, 106 total tackles this past season, 35 tackles for loss, 19 sacks, 26 quarterback hurries. He was one productive and busy guy in the opponent's backfield.
Yeah, in 3 years, 39 sacks is what our database shows for him. 39 sacks in 3 years. So that's pretty productive. And as you said, 19 this past year, and probably he'll push for 20 or more, going into a senior year, depending on how many games he gets to play and all that. So, yeah, it really is something to see.
Tony, the tight end from Mansfield that we discussed a couple weeks ago, and I got to admit, for as many times as I've heard his name, I don't want to botch his first name because I don't recall how to pronounce it. But Mr. Miller out of Mansfield, let's start the conversation on him.
Yeah, and he's definitely going to be a receiver. Bodpen Miller, 6'4", like 190 or so, plays quarterback at his Ontario high school. So that's one of the reasons why he's very under the radar, and he's going to play quarterback again this season as a senior. But an athlete, threw for 2,000 yards, rushed for I think 1,003 yards last year as a junior. And if you go look at his huddle highlights after the show, you'll see a guy who is quicker than the 6'4" would have you think. Like, he can get in and out of his cuts, and he makes guys miss. But he went to camp, worked out. I was there when Brian Hartline had a group of Miller and maybe 4 or 5 others, and was really putting them through their paces, and he was watching them closely. And then they had him run a 40, and then it came back a few days later for a 7-on-7, I think. But I believe he ran a 4.44 in the 40-yard dash. He's legit 6'4". He's not played receiver, so this is not a guy that Brian Hartline normally goes after. And you don't normally go after guys like this early if you're Ohio State. You're putting an offer out there for an Ohio guy, so you have to be willing to get the commitment. You have to be willing to take the commitment. This is more of sometimes we might see this after your senior season. But now, after your senior season, you're already signed with another program, so you kind of have to, I guess, act quickly. I think it's also a statement of the guys that they're not going to get. I don't think you can say the two are unrelated. Yes, they really liked what they saw from Bodpen Miller, but if you had your top 3 or 4 targets wanted to commit right now, there wouldn't be room for them. So I think the two are very committed, but also an intriguing prospect to Brian Hartline's going to have to teach to be a wide receiver, and that's not something he's normally had to do, not since maybe his first year when he was dealing with some of the former running backs that Urban Meyer would recruit. So generally Hartline just goes and gets receivers. Here's a quarterback that he's going to have to turn into a receiver, but one that physically has the traits to do so.
Yeah, I have no problem with this. Brian Hartline worked out Miller at the Ohio State. I guess he was there for 7-on-7, maybe for a camp day as well. You were there last week, Tony, when all that was going down, so you know more about it, exactly what the hands-on was with Brian Hartline, if he took him aside and worked him out, or what the deal was. But they knew full well what this kid is capable of as an athlete. I've seen a basketball highlight where he glides in and dunks the ball. So looks like he is a tremendous athlete, and a guy that, they're banking on his best football being, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, and teaching him the wide receiver position and that kind of thing. And just a natural athlete, born in Ethiopia, as I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And not sure if, that's the first player I've ever heard of that's ever, come from being born in Ethiopia. I don't recall the situation with Ashton Yabodi, if he was born in Africa or his parents moved over from Africa or whatever that was. But it's been very rare, obviously, to have a football player with those ties back to Africa, so that the continent of Africa. So it is very, very much a neat thing, I think, for him to be part of this culture and be part of this class. And Ontario is, again, kind of the same general area as Lexington, where Cade Stover came from, up in Mansfield area, and play that type of competition, probably Division II, Division III in terms of Ohio high schools. Not the biggest, but certainly not the smallest. And I'm interested to see what this senior year holds for him, and definitely, the future looks bright. This is a guy that you're banking on probably in his third, fourth, fifth year of college, maybe developing into being a frontline guy. So kind of a developmental guy, and I have no issue with it.
It's just to be able to get a guy that is willing to stick around and get developed, I think is you need those guys in a program just to remind people like, hey, you don't have to leave after your first year if things aren't going your way. You don't have to leave after your second year. You are allowed to stay, at least until the coaches tell you to leave.
Hopefully, we've seen how the season played out with the Ontario offense, where you've got this type of an athlete, and I understand playing some quarterback. He had 14 carries. If the stats I'm looking at are accurate, he threw 23 passes, completed 14. He had 14 carries. He didn't handle the ball too much. Again, I'm going with the Max Preps statistics, and maybe it's
no, you can't do that. That's not a full season for a starting quarterback.
His stats,
yeah,
I think
they don't report all those games on Max Preps, unfortunately.
Huddle, I think his stats are on his Huddle page, or at least his Huddle video, where like the first frame you'll see is the stats. But yeah, like over 2,000 yards passing, over 1,000 yards rushing as a junior. So he was their weapon. When Ted Ginn would do this, when you have your best player, you put him at quarterback. Ted Ginn played quarterback. I think we saw Christian Bryant do some of that. Even Demarion Witten has done some of that. So it's just, you've got that kind of athlete. Yeah, 2,328 yards passing, 19 touchdowns last year, and 1,003 yards rushing. So a guy that, to your point, Mark, has handled the football quite a bit, just not in the way that Ohio State intends him to do it, unless they want to, come up with some trick plays. But he will be working in the offseason on becoming a receiver more and more. I think you'll see that. And as we talked to him after one of the camps, he said, he expects to play quarterback, but they might throw some stuff his way as well at receiver next year, this coming year, just because.
Well, Steve, somebody's going to be the lowest ranked player in the number one ranked class in the country, but Jake Cook a little closer to home for you too.
If I could just throw back just a second, I looked up Ontario on joeitel.com. They're a Division III team. The team was 10-2 this past year, so he was, and my goodness, the scores, they put up 35, 38, 56, 45, 59, 45, 34, 31. They lost to Tiffin Columbian in the second round of the playoffs, ended up 10-2. So they play a lot of Division III and IV competition, some Division II competition as well. So play a representative schedule, it looks like, for their size school, and excited to see what Bodpin Miller will do in his senior year. So I just wanted to throw that in there just for clarification's sake on him. Jake Cook, you were getting ready to flip me up on Jake Cook here, and I like Jake Cook a lot. First saw him at the camp either a year ago or 2 years ago, and he was a very intriguing guy. When you first saw him, he had a unique body type, and you're like, man, if this kid really, really gets, his body, where it needs to be. I wouldn't say he was, fat or out of shape or anything like that. I just think he needed to be toned up just a little bit. It was obvious he had the want to and the desire, and he's a very earnest kid and willing to learn and willing to work. And I don't care what his ranking is. I'm buying stock in Jake Cook. I believe in him, and he's a guy that I think in 4 or 5 years we're going to look up and say that was a good take. All those years ago when he was a Louisville commitment and Justin Fry brought him in to work extra kind of behind the scenes, and they didn't immediately offer him that day. They waited till they got all 5 of the camp days done. And then like a week after the individual workout is when they came back and offered Jake Cook. He came in for an official visit, basically committed on the spot. And I have no qualms with this. He is an interior offensive lineman all the way. And I think he will pay big dividends, kind of like Bodpin Miller in his third, fourth, fifth college year in a few years. So just put him on the back burner, let him simmer, let him cook, and in a couple years, he'll be ready to help you win some games, I think.
former Mr. Relevance in Ohio State recruiting classes would include DeJuan Jones back in 2019 as the
That's
lowest ranked
funny.
guy.
I
I
like
think
that.
Pat Elfline maybe as well, way back in 2012,
Good
one of those
comparison.
guys. So, there's a history of it, but there's also a history of those guys not working out in terms of the last guy. Just wanted to throw a couple names out there. And again, these camp offers, I think, always carry a little bit more weight because coaches are looking at them. This isn't film. This is them 5 feet away, challenging them. Guys are competing for offers, then they're competing against other guys who are competing for those offers. They're going against defensive linemen who are competing for offers. So it's a different kind of environment, and coaches get to see a lot of the reactions and how they handle things. And as Steve said, they also get to see them. What did you do in the off season? What have you done in the year since we saw you last at camp, or what have you done since we saw you December at a football game? And a lot of times these are completely different players when they get there. And that's more of the stuff that the coaches want to see.
Questions and comments are welcome, folks. We appreciate the super chat contributions as well. Keep in mind, we got 2 experts here, typically 3, and maybe a third of one here. And these guys know their stuff and deliver and have for 5 to 6 years for us each and every week. So we so much appreciate Tony, Steve, Kevin. So again, consider the super chat contribution. We'll take your comments and questions. I'll take one name that was mentioned and allow you guys to either attack that one or freelance into the world of targets for the Buckeyes. Jordan Davison's a running back out of Santa Ana in the famous modern-day high school that produces so much talent down through the ages. He's the number 6 running back according to the composite. And he's an Ohio State crystal ball at this point, whoever wants to take him on. And again, wherever you guys want to take what the landscape looks like right now for who may fall next.
I can just say I'm not 100% sure what's going on with Jordan Davison. I think he's trying to juggle several top schools right now and trying to figure out exactly where he wants to go. I think Michigan might be on that list. I think that, again, Ohio State has a couple of running backs already in the class with Bo Jackson and Isaiah West. Davison would be similarly ranked to West. West is number 214 nationally. Davison is number 199. And 6 foot, 216 pounds, according to what I'm looking at here, and was just in for his official visit this past week. Has visited Michigan and Alabama previously. And he's just a big, powerful back and would be a 3rd running back in this class, which they could use some help there, obviously, because I think Henderson's obviously done after the upcoming season. And it seems like Quinshon Judkins will probably go to the NFL as well. You've got James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, who are true freshmen on the team this year. The walk-on TC Caffey is there, and then the 2 guys already committed. That's 4 scholarship backs right now for next year as they sit there. So if we figure that Judkins will not be back. So, Davison to me would be a good addition to the class. But again, I'm not 100% sure where things are headed. We can talk about a couple other guys. I don't know if Tony had something else to offer on Davison or not.
Well, I think the thing to keep in mind with Davison is he still took his Ohio State visit, so that shows there's interest. But you go there and you're going to need to be explained what is the benefit of me joining a class and being the 3rd running back. And the other thing to keep in mind is Ohio State accepted Isaiah West's commitment, knowing it might push them out of the Jordan Davison recruitment. So that was something that they did willingly. So if they don't end up with Davison, it feels like they were okay as long as they got West out of the deal. Whereas maybe they don't accept the commitment from West and go all in on Davison. Maybe that doesn't work out, or maybe it does. But they were comfortable taking West, knowing that it would impact this. I think that's something to keep in mind there. And I still think that you don't need 3 running backs in this class. You can go get a transfer portal running back after the year. And we know they want generally 5 scholarship running backs. You've got 2 in James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon. You got 2 in Bo Jackson and Isaiah West for next year. And then go get somebody out of the portal who is experienced, possibly another Quinshon Judkins type, or perhaps even Quinshon Judkins himself. And the NIL could play a factor here. Being a first-round pick for a running back is pretty hard. Second-round pick last year. I'm just looking in in 2023, like the number 45 pick in the draft made like $1.5 million. And is that would a guy like Quinshon Judkins stay for $2 million? Is that something you would want to do? Is it something you would need to do with perhaps a new starting quarterback? You want him to have some sort of a comfort level, or you're still a little concerned about the young guys? I think that is something to keep in mind, but also the guy that running backs want to get to the league as quickly as possible because they know they have a shorter shelf life. But if you can make $1 million in college, do you want to do that? Or are you just sick of school at that point as well? Even if it's all online, it's still school. But I think you can go get a portal guy next year and be very, very happy with that.
I know everyone is all hot and bothered about a couple other guys, and one of them is Malik Autry, big-time defensive tackle out of Alabama, would be a third signee from Alabama. I think Opelika, Alabama, I think. And Bill Kurlick on our site was reporting that Zion Grady was trying to recruit Malik Autry away from Auburn to join this Ohio State class, and he was also in for a visit this past weekend. Ohio State had 45 players in for official visits during the month of June, currently with 19 commitments, and probably going to end up signing 23 to 26 players in that realm in this 2025 class. And of course, the other guy that they just had in that everyone's all agog about is David Sanders Jr., the big-time offensive lineman from North Carolina. I think the number 2 or number 3 overall player in the country. And for Justin Fry, I don't want to say that his career as Ohio State offensive line coach hinges on signing David Sanders Jr., but boy, oh boy, it would really help his cause if he was able to land a player of that caliber in this 2025 class. And it's kind of between Ohio State and Tennessee for David Sanders Jr. You wonder about NIL inducements and everything when it comes down to both these guys, Autry and Sanders. And is Ohio State going to back up the Brinks truck to get both these guys? So, the salary cap is already rearing its ugly head in college football. Here we go.
I think one of the interesting things is for Justin Fry or for any assistant coach, you have to be a very, very good recruiter of 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds. Now you also have to be a very good salesman and recruiter for the collective, convincing them, if I can just get $2 million, if you can just give me $2 million, I can go get this guy. And so not only are you're recruiting on 2 fronts, and you have to be good at both fronts to be really, really good. And so, yeah, you're selling a kid who's 16, then you're selling a billionaire who is, 46, and you're like, look, this is all we just need a little bit more. And, what's it going to take for me to put you into this recruiting class is basically what the coaches are telling the collective people in terms of, I need more money. Rattle the cup, put a couple quarters in there and rattle it and see what kind of salesman you are. And maybe you might get your 6-star offensive lineman.
It's crazy. It's just nuts.
I don't have any data.
Everything that you've learned over hundreds of years of following college football, it's all out the window. You can now openly buy players, and it's a new frontier for sure.
It's not out the window. It's the window is open for everybody to see what has always been going on. And so now it's out there for everybody to see, and it's no longer the curtains are no longer pulled shut. Everything's out in the open for I didn't want to know how it was made. I just wanted the guy on the field.
That's it.
We also don't know everything that we've discussed to date, which is about 6 different players, how important these discussions are and these commitments and these signings. We knew that 5 years ago they were extremely important and were almost 100% guaranteed, not necessarily that the commitment would go through, but once the player signed that he was going to be an Ohio State player throughout, unless he did something to go off the rails. And now I don't know what that composition of what a recruiting class is going to look like against the average roster in terms of the percentage, but I do know that it's significantly dropped. And I don't have any compilation of data, but like you guys, I look at this stuff every day and look at different teams every day. And Ohio State is still foundationally one of the most homegrown teams in the nation, even though there's a lot of emphasis and a lot of attention given to the star players that they picked up through the portal. And maybe we're seeing the end of an era here with this collection of Ohio State players that are going to hit the field here in 2024 in regards to this being the final group of players that to this large extent, to that quality and that quantity that were committed and signed to this school and played a 3 or 4 year career.
Well, you're always going to the high school, right? The high school is always going to be where they get the bulk of their players. That's where they're going to do the bulk of their recruiting. That's the way they've got it set up. That's the way they want to continue it. And they're very adamant that you can't just go buy a national championship. You can't go do it like Texas A&M did. And I know what I just said, Michigan fans are scoffing and laughing right now. You're talking about 2 or 3 players that they went into the portal that they had relationships with, not including Will Howard, who the quarterbacks are just completely out of this world in terms of moving around. But I think every year you look, maybe you add 30 players. Now, sometimes it's going to be 25 high school guys and 5 portal guys. Sometimes it's going to be 20 high school guys and 10 portal guys. I think you set the number at 30 to 32, and whatever you need, say you need some veteran linebackers, maybe that ups the number from 4 transfers to 8 or something like that, where you just fluctuate the need based on the youth that you have and the experience that you need, and you dial the high school recruiting down, you dial the portal recruiting up. But the other thing is there has to be guys in the portal. There are always guys in high school. You don't know if there are going to be guys that you need in the portal. They would have loved to have added an offensive lineman after spring. There weren't any. They were very fortunate that there was a year ago with Josh Simmons. If they went into last season, this year, and there's no Josh Simmons and they need somebody, they're out of luck. So I think you're always going to go, and I know Ryan Day is always going to be focused on high school recruiting. And then the portal is the supplemental things. You fill in the cracks or you do something to put yourself over the top.